a lovely day!
Welcome to Flat Earth Debate Uncut and After Show. I'm your host Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification icon to keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you'd like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they premiere, and there's also a PayPal, Patreon and crypto link in the info box below the video. Speaking of Patreon, I'm going to do a quick shout out to all of you who do support me on Patreon, so a massive shout out of appreciation to Abraham Mohammed, Adam, Adrian Quintana, Alistair Main, Billy Highvault, Blue Ridge Rider, Burn Fat Till My Stomach Is As Flat As the Earth, Chow Young Cat, Dank, Dave Reckier Gaffer, David Wayne Foster, Daz Studio 68, my latest Patreon, so nice for joining you. Thank you very much indeed, Daz. Really appreciate your support. Also, Edwin Johnson, Owen Jennisons, Felix Hung, Fireball X, God Rockin', Henrik86, Jeranism, Kirsten Smith, Liam Nedrick, Life is Short, Matt, Missouri Bear, Nagara, Nathan Thompson, Naibai, Qatar Craig, Renee, Rob H, Sally Ballis, Silver Umbrella, Skeptic936, Texas Mike, The Real Gabster, Tina Baker, Tom Herkins, and Windrider. So a massive shout out of appreciation to all of you for supporting me on Patreon. Now we are joined by a few people in both Discord and G+, so I'll raise the mics on them and you can enjoy their dulcet tones while I set up for the first live show.
Nathan needs to unmute Q. He can't hear from the live stream.
Radio check.
We could hear you now.
Okay, we hear you now.
Check one. Can't hear anyone else. I got a bunch of light ups over here in Discord. I don't hear them.
They're all live muted. Or server muted, as I say.
Got it. Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
Morning, QE. You're up early today?
Morning.
Yeah, I had to change my. I needed to change my routine, so because I was going to bed real late and getting up late, that's not working. So, yep, up early today.
Nice to see.
Got some hot coffee.
Hot tea myself.
Teas for wussies.
They eat the tea.
Tea is food. Go ahead.
They eat it.
Yeah, that's right. They eat it in England. Yep.
It means I'm not dependent on coffee like some are. That's a good thing, though. That kind of, in a sense, makes you weak, no?
All right. Let me put another bonehead in live mute. This Timmy Tom fucking idiot. You're just live muted. Get out of here. Delete that fucking shit. I'm tired of these pussies. So I'm sorry. Excuse my French.
I didn't hear him do anything wrong. What did he do?
Text chat.
Timmy Tom. Text chat.
Gotcha.
He can go type on open discussions or in the vacuum somewhere. I don't really care. He's not in here. Hey, Righteous, any problems? Are things working out? I've been reviewing the post. It looks a little better. Looks a little cleaned up to me.
Yeah, I think so too.
Outstanding.
So we were just having a discussion, Righteous and I, about...
What about your favorite colors?
My what?
What about your favorite colors?
With that to do
Yeah.
with colors.
No need.
Black swan or white swan. Are those colors? I'm not even sure anymore.
Yes, they are colours.
What's up, brother?
What do you mean, yeah?
Go on, 10th man, before you were so rudely interrupted.
I'm just trying to figure out what's happening here. Anyway, so
Bye, Nathan.
Hi, Kiwi.
all right, chocolate. Go ahead, say what you gotta say. Come on, hurry up.
For fuck's sake, what is wrong with these people? Go ahead, 10th man. I'll try and keep him under control.
So, Wright just asked me if I listen to Glowbusters. I said, well, I don't listen to Glowbusters. And he said that, what's the big problem? Let everybody look at the black swan the way they want to. And I said, well, the big problem is they're changing the modus tollens and the way the argument was set up. And that's the problem. So if you have a blue car,
They ain't changing it. They ain't changing it. They don't understand it. I agree with Righteous to this point. Bob's a numpty. That's obvious. And everyone that follows him is numptified. So I just say just blow it off. That's where I stand. But go on. Sorry.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, well, I'm privy to information that they got other information talking about the modus tollens and how they got it wrong. And even with that correction, they still insist on calling the black swan the white swan, which means they're changing the argument from the source it came from, which is, hey, you're better off not talking about it if you're going to do that.
No, I want him to continue to do it and make a horse's ass out of himself, him and the rest of his numpties. I want him to continue because he doesn't understand the argument. They don't understand the argument. They might get it after the ballers. So I don't know. Anyone with half a brain can see this. So I don't. Who watches his show? I don't get it.
I like to watch. I watch it sometimes. But that wasn't my argument.
What,
That
for
man
comedy?
strawman me.
Okay, what did I strawman? Righteous.
I just said they don't have to focus on it. The one part I picked up on was that everybody should be pushing on it, and I'm saying, not everybody has to push on it, kind of thing. And with that sense, I agree with what was it Bob said or something.
No, and I said to you that that's their excuse for not giving credit to the modus tollens the way it should be. So don't call a blue car white because then you're going to be looking like a fool, like Q.
And I understand that part. Yeah.
Okay, then to cover the fact that you calling a blue white car a white car instead of a blue car, then you say, well, we don't have to push it. Don't make us push it. We can do it any way we want. Okay, well, just going to show how stupid you are because the color's wrong. You're not getting it. You're better off not talking about it.
My acid test is just to
No,
ask
let
them
him
to...
talk.
Sorry, go on.
I said, no, let them talk. I love it. Let them keep talking. I'm loving it. Go on. Sorry.
I was going to say I've been approached a couple of times by people on our side about this, and my acid test is to say, okay, recite back the argument to me. If you're on my side and there's no harm, no foul, just give me the argument so I understand that you understand it. That's all I want.
Yep. Not a chance, right?
I could probably say it by heart, and I'm not expecting people to be able to say the argument by heart, but an appreciation of the argument in a more simplistic format. For example, if the Earth is a sphere, we have a geometric horizon. Black Swan demonstrates we haven't got a geometric horizon, therefore Earth's not a sphere. That's a much more simplified version. Now, obviously, if that was the actual modus tollens formulation, you could pick it apart. It's much more specific. It's based on the actual geometry they give us for their model and the parameters that would entail. So it's slightly more complicated than the diluted version, but if we can't even hear that you've understood how the argument is phrased, and by positioning it in terms of what is presented in the picture and how it appears to be flat, I've got to disagree with Brandon Toys, like, this isn't a flat Earth proof. Yeah, it is. You can easily argue it that way, but they just go, refraction. So this has come from a different angle. We've taken what they say, okay, you say Earth's a sphere. This is how Earth as a sphere is laid down by you. If Earth is a sphere as laid down by you, this must occur with the physicality of that sphere. That does not occur, therefore Earth is not a sphere. Now that, as powerful arguments go, is as strong as it gets. It's absolutely watertight. You can't suddenly argue that geometry is physically changing by virtue of refraction, because it stops being geometry. It stops being physical, and their entire argument, the argument we are in here, the whole point of us being here is to argue against the standard rhetoric, which is that Earth is a sphere. Well, Earth being a sphere requires a geometric horizon. That's your white swan. That's the standard rhetoric. Until such time as everybody understands or forgets entirely that we ever had an argument that Earth was a ball, then you can call it white swans, but there'd be no point describing it as a swan in the first place if that was the case. So the Karl Popper analogy is fairly simplistic. It's based around the current assertion that we live on a sphere with a geometric physical horizon. We don't. That's debunked within the modus tollens proof by using this piece of evidence. Now, by any stretch, you don't necessarily have to have the photo to make that argument. You could make the argument and then go and get a random other photo that shows the exact same thing. In other words, another black swan.
Sure.
But the logical consistency doesn't necessarily require the photo to make the argument. But you prove your logical consistency with the argument, and it's the logical consistency that is the argument, not the rarity of the photograph or the photograph itself. Yeah. So the logical argument when people start changing black swans to white swans, it's like, well, that's the premise of our argument that's undebunkable. Not even the Karl Popper analogy with the black swan. That's not the argument either. It's just an analogy to make it more simple.
Right.
So you can ignore the photo.
You got it.
You can ignore the analogy of Karl Popper and black swans, so long as you understand the actual bloody argument, which is modus tollens. And if you understand the modus tollens argument, you understand how it's undebunkable, and then you can back it with proof like the platforms or Ranty's pictures, or any picture that has a geometric impossibility. But the reason it's being described as a geometric impossibility is because the standard is the geometry, i.e. the standard's the white swan. The current claim is we have geometric horizons. Now, in a fantasyful world where us flat earthers ignore all other people around us in the real world who still think they're on a sphere, yeah, you could call it a white swan, but it wouldn't make any sense and wouldn't have an analogy that went along with it that referred back to an undebunkable proof. So calling it a white swan is so ludicrous, it's untrue. Now, if people are like, well, who cares? It's like, well, no. We care because we are now in a position where we can categorically debunk the globe. Now, there's been so many people who write the word globe debunked above an image, and then there's no logical consistency that's going to be undebunkable about their claim. In other words, it's just a baseless assertion of a debunking of the heliocentric model, and then you normally highlight an anomaly. Well, that's just an anomaly as opposed to a cast iron debunking that you can't get around, which is what we've got. So yeah, we're going to get a bit tetchy if people start fiddling with it.
Nathan, is that on tape?
Of course.
Get stuffed.
That was perfectly articulated. I couldn't have done it better myself. Perfect. These numpties are all enamored with the black swan, right? They're not even looking at the argument. They just can't get past the black swan. Just the name, the black swan. Listen, the black swan. There's more than one black swan, you numpties. They got this idea that it's the black swan. It's the only one. I don't know where they're getting that from. It is baffling to me how stupid, and it's our side. I'm not talking about the globies. They don't even know the argument. The flat earthers don't know it. Over.
Hey, Sleeping Warrior.
Hey.
Good morning, people.
What's up, Tony?
Good morning,
Sorry,
Chocolate.
last night, guys. Sorry about last night, guys. Something came up.
Shit, John.
I didn't make it back in 20.
How long? I bet it took you at least 50.
Yeah, it took me an hour and 20.
Fucking hell, that's shocking.
Yeah, it was unforeseen. So sorry about that.
You're forgiven.
When we go live, can we break down the actual modus tollens argument? Maybe just repeat it a few times, even though it's going to be like saying it and then pulling apart how it's said, putting it back together and then saying it again, and then pulling it back apart and putting it back together and saying it again. I just think that's necessary at the moment. I know we can spend all day.
Okay.
Go on, sorry. Who is that?
I think it's made more complicated than it actually is. The minute you say modus tollens and then say if P then Q, if you say it like that, I think that's where we're losing people. If you say it in colloquial language so that people understand the point, if the Earth's a sphere, the horizon must be 1.21 gigawatts. The horizon is not 1.21 gigawatts, therefore the Earth cannot be a sphere with a geometric horizon. If you put it like that, people will get it. And then say it's no different when you say modus tollens, but people don't seem to get the modus tollens bit. So if they get the first bit, stick to that. If you don't get the first bit, then you're not going to get the second bit. But if you get the first bit, then that, because I agree, they're not getting, even our side are not getting this, and we're getting flack. And it's like, what the hell is going on? This is really easy. Come on.
That's not the case, Anthony.
Well,
Sorry to disagree.
Well, I've seen comments against us from our own side because they don't understand the point that's being made. They think that we're trying to say that this is a flat Earth proof still. How many times do we need to say we're not arguing it from that perspective? Yes, we can argue it from there, but we're not. We're arguing it from a totally different perspective, and that's not the point we're making, guys.
That's not the case either, Anthony.
It is. I've seen messages from people on our side saying that exact point.
I don't care if they send their grandmother on their deathbed to give that stupid excuse you just said they say. That's not the case.
Nathan, am I wrong?
Well, let me finish.
Go and tell
We have a collector's edition. We have at least another 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, today 9 shows. If they want to be students and learn something, they will get it. If they want their pride and ego on the way, they won't get it.
Another show tomorrow.
What's your show focused on tomorrow?
Black Swan.
Just the Black Swan, or is there any other ancillary subjects that you're covering?
I don't think so for right now, because this is people are just not getting it. There's a lot that do, but there's many who don't, obviously. So I'm like you said, you told me a long time ago, remember when I got frustrated talking about independent and dependent variables, and I kept going over and over and over and people weren't getting it. And you said, don't get frustrated. Just keep on saying it. Keep on repeating it. And I think you're right. So I like I said,
I like how you paraphrase that. The reality that, and I'm not embarrassed about this, is I was asking over and over and over again, but I disclaimed that would be the case. I'm like, look, it's going to take me a while to get this, so just keep saying it and eventually it'll sink in. And then when it came to the audience being the same, I was like, look, I'm no different. The fact that I'm disclaiming I don't get it, rather than coming up with a whole load of bullshit, pretending I understand it, and all the other obfuscation that we get from your average Joe when you try and explain something complicated. I actually said, I don't understand still. Please, can you explain it for the 5th time?
Hey, I'll tell you someone who gets it. Rumpus
That's
gets
baloney.
it. Rumpus gets it because he had to contact Andrew Thomas Young.
Yeah, I got told some new information last night in context. The reason why, I struggled with this initially because my view on it is obviously the logic on its own is not enough. You got to have evidence to furnish that logic, to support it, to prove that it's true. Now, in this context, it's like, well, okay, so do you understand that logic isn't taught to kids anymore? And I'm like, no, I didn't realize it ever was. And he said it used to be, but they removed it and they don't teach you logic anymore. They don't teach you logical thought anymore, because they don't want you to be thinking logically. If you think too logically, then things get unraveled pretty quickly when everyone's thinking logically. So they don't teach that logical thought anymore. And that, by virtue of that one fact, that's why people are struggling with it. He said if we were all taught logic again in school, then nobody would have a problem with it. It's because you're not wired to think this way. And that's the reason why people are generally struggling on our side as well as on the ball side. And I was like, yeah, I totally understand that now. That makes perfect sense because I see it. People are not getting it yet.
It's strictly true. They don't teach logic in state schools, public schools, if you're an American. They do in private schools. I know, I went to one. I went to a private school and they definitely do teach logic.
It's not part of the national curriculum, though,
No,
is it?
that's what I just said.
Isn't it
It's not in public schools / state schools. That's correct.
Yeah, yeah.
Isn't there some relation to set theory as well? Because I think I did a class set theory and logic together at uni. So they kind of go together because set theory is about subsets and supersets and sort of helps to understand the logical formulation.
They don't even teach it at university. Well, let me take that back. I was wrong. It depends on what class you take or classes you take.
Yeah, for me, it was a prerequisite for some computer science subjects, which I minored in.
Computer science, you would definitely take. Yeah, got it. Yep.
Yeah, that was another reason I understood logic. My dad was a programmer, so as a very young child, my dad had to explain how computers worked to me as a kid, and the way they work is with logic. So understanding logic is absolutely essential if you're programming.
Right.
Okay, yeah, the programming thing definitely, helps.
Who was that? Was that a flat earther? Who said that?
Yeah, that's me, Earth Shape Investigator, now Swan Shape Investigator. Yeah, we've spoken before, Kiwi.
Okay,
Yeah.
Swan Shape Investigator. Can you recite the Flat Earth Infantryman's Creed?
What is it?
What is it? That's your first general order. For damn sake.
Sorry. This is my black swan. There are many like it, but this one is mine.
Okay, that's the first part of it. And in fact, how ironic. You started this.
Yeah, that's true. You did. It was you that got this into the fray.
Yes, it was.
Are people saying it now?
Where's he at? Didn't anyone give him? Earth-Shape Investigator, are you in Discord?
Yeah, I'm in Discord. Like, remember how I'm mentioning I'm moving countries in a few weeks? So yeah, I'm not so free. I just pop in here and there, and yeah.
We don't want to hear that. Dog ate my homework. I tugged on Superman's cape. Look at live stream. The live stream text chat. There you go. When I ask you again. 10th.
Yes.
What is the Flat Earth Infantryman's Creed?
I have to find it to read it in context.
That's unacceptable.
This is my black swan.
I told you guys to know it by Monday. It's Monday.
I am. Quit rumpusing me while I read it. This is my black swan.
No, I don't want you to read it.
What do you mean you don't want us to read it? I'm frantically trying to find the damn thing.
That's what I was doing.
Yeah.
I want you guys to know
I think he's pop quizzing us right now.
Yes, I told you.
Hang on, I got it. I'm going to act like Andrew Thomas Young. It's completely theoretical and imaginary, the Black Swan Infantry Creed.
Yeah, nice try.
We have to be aware that there's a risk with the request that John's making, because we run the risk of being accused of being brainwashed. So how do we negate that risk?
By who? The people who are
God.
brainwashed? We can't have a little fun here?
I don't know. I just
Anthony.
don't want anybody to criticize us for not realizing that we could be at risk of being brainwashed.
You're on a debate show. Accept criticism. We're having fun. If they can't get the fun, they're the ones who are brainwashed.
No, take Anthony to the gulag.
That's even better.
Hey, Nathan, I put it in Master B's.
Yeah, I'll post it on 24/7 now.
Okay, I'll read it.
Oh, I've posted it there. I've posted it there many
So this
times.
is the Flat Earth Infantryman's Creed. This is my black swan. There are many like it, but this one is mine. My black swan is my best friend. It is my life. I must master it as I master my life. Without me, my black swan is useless. Without my black swan, I am useless.
How come you didn't rumpus him when you read it?
Different rules for Nathan.
Well, because he was reading it. Everyone should have memorized it. I told you that Friday that I was going to test you.
Memorized it.
Yeah, it seems a bit like
use a
school,
mnemonic or something for crying out loud.
More importantly, I've memorized the modus tollens. If the Earth is a sphere with a radius of 3959 miles, then every distance to horizon must be no more than 1.225 times the square root of the observer's height in feet. That's the if P then Q. Black Swan.
Much better if we say.
Go on.
It's much better if we say 1.21 gigawatts as a deliberate mistake so that people remember it.
I'll just finish it. Distance to horizon is greater than 1.225 times the observer's height in feet. Therefore, the Earth is not a sphere. You know that off by heart.
That was real close.
I've known that by heart for a minute now. That's great.
Yeah, it was pretty close. 90%.
Chocolate.
Might not get to reply because I could start the live show now.
All right.
Oh, what a day! What a lovely day!
Welcome to Flat Earth Debate Live. I'm your host Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification icon and join button if you'd like to become a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member and keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you'd like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they are live. There's also a PayPal, Patreon and crypto link in the info box below the video. Most importantly, if you'd like to join the discussion right here, right now, simply mute the page you are currently watching, then click the link in the info box below this video to join the panel and express your views on the nature of Earth. If you do join, please don't swear. If you do, you'll be ejected, and if you are, please don't try to rejoin the stream using sock accounts. You'll be warmly welcomed back on the next stream. Please also share the show on social media. Sharing the show obviously increases the live audience, but this in turn increases the chances of a more diverse panel, so please share the show. And one last time, if you're new to the channel or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon and join button if you'd like to become a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member and keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. Now we are joined by Sleeping Warrior, Chocolate Saiyan, 10th Man, Righteous Force, Paul Hall and Quantum Eraser, along with a whole bunch of people in Discord. So welcome one and all.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
Good morning. Good morning. We're going to rattle our way through housekeeping, and then today's topic is probably going to focus mostly on the Black Swan, and I'm hoping that it's not going to be too negative or detrimental to the people on our own side who, while they claim to support us in the argument, we feel don't necessarily understand the argument and then have paraphrased the argument into something slightly nonsensical, and we've got stroppy with them. So I'm going to hopefully kind of draw a line under us getting stroppy with them and just hopefully more take them under our wing and explain how it actually works in regards to the sphere model and how it debunks it, rather than saying, how dare you change our logical consistency. Yeah, so we'll hopefully get to that after the housekeeping question. So first and foremost, any signs of a physical geometric edge capable of measurement?
No, only a non-physical edge.
About that physical geometric horizon you globies all need. Anything?
Yeah, where's your edge, guys? You know that edge that you keep asking us about? Yeah, you've got one. We don't have to have one. But you absolutely do, because boats are supposed to go over it. So how's about showing it? Where is it? Come on.
That's something else I want to focus on. Can you remind me about that, Anthony? Our edge we don't have versus their edge they need and no longer have. So, yeah, Flat Earth Society. Any evidence at all of any Earth curvature?
Not from Carson City.
No evidence whatsoever of Earth curvature.
Any scientific evidence of gravity?
They can't even define it, Nathan. I mean, there are still ballers that still push that gravity is a force, even though everywhere tells them it doesn't. They just need to go and read a few textbooks, basic ones, like year 11 stuff. Year 11, the age of about 15, they start getting a bit of Einsteinian stuff in it at year 11, or just before they leave school. And there is further reading that we can do. And if you have to use finger spaces to help you, it's not that difficult. It says the key word that you need to be aware of is that it's an effect. It's not a force. It can't cause anything to happen. It's an effect of something. And we know what it's caused by. And, you know, that initial nudge that it needs, yeah, we can recreate that in a day-to-day living, and we see it all the time. So we know what causes it. We don't need any force. But you guys need to be aware, the ballers need to be aware that it's an effect. So stop telling people it's a force. We know it's not. That argument's so 2019. Shout out to George Musa. No, there's no evidence for gravity, Nathan. They can't even define it.
Any single viable hypothesis from any of the fields of astronomy, cosmology, or astrophysics?
No.
Anybody else? Feel free. Any evidence of axial rotation?
Nope.
No.
Down the list of people in the Discord server, see if there's anybody the fundamentalist sphere belief in there. Doesn't look like it's me. Any evidence of the distance to the sun?
They need to prove it's a physical object first. They need to know its actual size, because they need to know that to work out its distance. Ping radar reflections from the sun. Well, if you look into the ping reflections for the sun, you'll come across a couple of key names: Christian Huygens and Eratosthenes, and you'll realize that Eratosthenes assumed the shape of the Earth to be a sphere, and you'll realize that Christian Huygens assumed that the size of Venus was the same size as Earth. Well, if the Earth's not a sphere and Venus is not the same size as Earth, then the distance and the calculations to the sun no longer make any sense. They don't work. So we don't even know what the sun is. And they keep telling us it's a hydrogen ball of plasma and whatever, nuclear, whatever, but nobody has any evidence of that. It's all done with spectroscopy.
Any evidence that you can have gas pressure without a container?
Yeah, in fact, the Flat Earth's got a claim. He reckons he's got some evidence for it. He wants to debate me on this evidence. He's just a nasty person, and I don't like talking to people that are overtly nasty, and he is that. So I can't have a conversation with him. But he also thinks gravity's a force, so that kind of stops me as well. But yeah, it's not good.
That's okay. Do you know what his claim is?
Not really. He'd have to come on the show, and we'd have to rip him apart. I honestly don't know, and I wouldn't like to guess.
Fair enough. Any evidence of the R value, Earth radius?
No, it's necessarily in their model when it comes to the horizon, because boats go over it. But as we all are aware, boats ain't going over no horizon. So no, there's got to be the evidence. Even Rumpus admits that the geometric horizon is nothing more than a calculation. How do we know it's even there then? And we don't know it's there. Oh well.
Any evidence of a self-perpetuating molten iron core at the centre of said presupposed spherical Earth?
No.
Okay, that concludes housekeeping. So
Easy.
the problem is with the Black Swan is the boss has got involved now. Look, Dearth is on the scene, so he's not the man with whom to fuck. So we need to sort this out amongst ourselves, because I don't want to piss the boss off. That's the bottom line here. Now Dearth's involved, we've got to do something about this, basically.
I've got some formaldehyde on a rag. We could tie him to a chair and out. He'd never know it was us.
Okay.
Well, there's probably some support for that argument. That was a really good suggestion, I thought. Don't all shout at once.
Not bad, really, not bad.
So let's just go through the Black Swan without the Black Swan, which is to say that we're no longer going to for the next few minutes, talk about the Karl Popper analogy. We're just going to talk about the logical argument that disproves the globe Earth. So if the Earth is a sphere with a radius of 3959 miles, then every distance to the geometric horizon must measure no more than 1.225 times the square root of the observer's height in feet. Now, we have demonstrated with a picture that the horizon is categorically further than the physical geometry of the claimed Earth. Ergo, we don't have a physical geometric horizon. So the Earth is not a sphere of 3959 miles radius, as per their claim that we are on a physical sphere. The main crux of this argument is the difference between a perspective-based horizon that is absolutely not physical versus a physical edge of a sphere, a geometric position they measure and claim obscures things in the distance. That's a physical blockage that you cannot see past. And that physical obstruction they claim is based on their radius value. It is, by definition, physical. So from this point, when any arguments come our way about a justification for why this physical, geometric horizon is in a different position to their physical, geometric model they claim we live on, they automatically lose the argument, because this position must be a physical, geometric horizon. And the image, which will not be named with the terminology as catchy as it is for this purpose, that image is something simply backing up that logical argument. There are many other images like it that demonstrate a geometric impossibility for a horizon. And if we are on a sphere, we have a physical, geometric horizon. That is now debunked. If we don't have a physical geometric horizon, as we have demonstrated, we do not live on a sphere with sphere geometry. So the importance of this argument is to understand that the formulation in logic is to use the assertion we are on a sphere as the starting premise, and then debunk it based on the failings of being on a physical geometric sphere. So from there, that's the summary. We'll get into the discussion. We hopefully won't get into the people on our own side that are rearranging this logic by way of an analogy we've formally given called the black swan analogy. Now, we'll get into that later, but so far, does anybody want to add anything about the logic? Not the analogy, not the picture, just the argument in logic. Anybody at all?
I really
Well,
want to go on.
Go ahead, man.
I just feel the need to distinguish between the two positions that we can argue, but I don't want to do it yet because Nathan's expressly said not to do it yet. But it's important because if you understand that like you can have 2 or 3 different arguments for the same point, right? And they've got different weights to them. Well, if you've got you're going to go with the strongest argument. So you're not going to pick the one that's in the middle or the weaker argument of the 3. You're going to pick the strongest argument, even though you can argue it similarly with all the similar points, and they're very similar. You're going to go with the best one. And I don't know. I think we'll come back to it in a sec. Once Nathan's point's been concluded off, because it is important that we understand that there's more than one way to skin a cat. So let's try and finish Nathan's argument, Nathan's question or point first, and then we'll come back to
Content.
Yeah, this show is known for spotting logical fallacies. Am I right?
Yeah. When you're arguing for the globe and you attempt to formulate a logical consistency, which is the attempt, if you had, is it modus ponens when it's the actual logical consistency? If P then Q, P therefore Q? Well,
Yes.
Yeah, that's modus ponens.
so if you were to argue what we have in the, I'm going to have to use the terminology, in the black swan argument, the logical part of it, if you're to argue that from a sphere point of view, you could only formulate it into modus ponens because it would be logically consistent and you wouldn't have any violations with it. As soon as it fails that acid test, it turns into a logical consistency that defies the premise it's based on. That's modus tollens. So you're saying if it has these properties, it will have this outcome. It doesn't have this outcome, therefore it doesn't have those properties. And they can, sorry, I'll lead you back in a second, tenth. You can't formulate a sphere argument with logical consistency because we're not on a sphere. Therefore, what we have here and have to defeat is logical fallacy. Now, what QE has done with the black swan is taken a logical consistency that's based around the failings of their claim we're on a sphere. Ergo, it debunks us being on a sphere with logical consistency rather than what we get, which is logical fallacy. Go ahead, Tenth.
Yes, well said. And this is why it leads to begging the question, because they cannot have any of the evidence that they need for their sphere line up. So it comes across as a fallacy. And then when they're caught, it's always in the begging the question atmosphere. Well, because the Earth is a sphere, this is why it's 7/6R. And we said, well, you haven't even proven the Earth's a sphere yet. How can you immediately go to 7/6R? And so I think it's fantastic. And I think we should stay to the definition and Socratic method, as we always say, and words mean things. So I'm on board.
I would say that one of the best parts is that for so long they've tried to use this presupposed radius value on us to try to assert things like 7/6R and using the curve calculators, and they've gotten upset because we've always asked them, well, where did you get this radius value from? You know, how did you measure that? How did you confirm and verify that empirically? Well, now we're using this radius value to form this logical consistency, and as we do, we see that it does not work. So the same radius that they've been fighting for, actually used, proves their geometric horizon wrong, actually debunks their globe. Well, they've been debunked by their own math, and it's a beautiful thing. I mean, if you don't believe we live on a spinning ball, because we don't. And
Exactly.
the math is there. You guys love the math, right? they always cry about math as reality. Well, here's your math. And here's your reality that your very math denies. So enjoy that, and welcome to Flat Earth.
Up until now, I've said, in R you trust, when we had a draw. Because essentially, the argument they put forth, which is tenable, just, required faith in R. So I just poked fun at it. I can't say that anymore, though, as of now, because of the Black Swan argument. So no, it's not in R you trust anymore. You cannot trust in R anymore. It's been debunked. So no longer just trust in R faith-based fundies. Not even your faith can save you anymore. R has been debunked. In R you trust does no longer applies. Because it's gone. We've taken it away from you. The geometry is the R value. That is your geometry. Your R value gives you your geometric horizon. X marks the spot on Mick West's model when he shows you the side-on orthographic view. You've got a little X with the word horizon on it. It's placed right on the edge of the sphere based on the radius. So we've now taken that radius from you. You can't trust in sphere geometry anymore. It's been debunked. Goodbye R. Goodbye Earth-based geometry. Goodbye sphere Earth. Now, those aren't wishy-washy statements. Those are facts. Now, for our own side that don't recognise the power of those statements, you need to wake up to the reality of this argument pretty sharpish, rather than diluting it or changing it. Sphere Earth R value's been debunked. They can no longer just trust in it and throw it back in your face and throw you a load of geometry about what the atmosphere's doing. When you've debunked the geometry, they can't extrapolate out 7/6 R or fudge it to infinite over R because we've taken that away. We've busted the geometry. So understanding that the physicality of their argument is based on their geometry, and that requires a physical horizon. And they don't have one anymore. Game over, checkmate, no argument can rebut this.
The ball has been busted. I love it.
Okay, so let me address. I'll do it as brief as I can. Right, there's two ways. Right, when you get a piece of evidence, right, it's going to fall into one of four categories. It either doesn't prove either model, or it doesn't support either model. Second, it supports both models and it's inconclusive. Third, it supports ball but doesn't really support flat. Fourth, it supports flat but doesn't support ball. Now, depending on how you interpret the evidence, you can argue it whichever way you want. With the oil platforms, there's two ways that you can argue it. You can argue it as one, a flat earth proof, or you can argue it two, as a ball earth death killing nuclear bomb. Now, if you argue it as a flat earth proof, you can say that that's a white swan in the sense that there's lots of flat earth proofs. What's special about this one? It's no more special or less special than anything else. And you could argue that that's a valid criticism. It makes sense. But if you argue it as a ball earth killer, then you apply modus tollens to it. And when you do that, you're no longer debunking something that Nathan's presented or John's presented or me or whatever. It removes the personality from it, and it requires logic to be debunked, and you can't debunk the logic because modus tollens is there. So if the Earth's a sphere, then the horizon must be 1.2 miles away. Horizon is not 1.2 miles away, therefore the Earth cannot be a sphere. So the logic there is supported by the evidence and proven by the evidence, and they can't debunk the logic. So they're left with just the evidence. The facts are there, indisputable. So you can't get past the facts. The only thing that they can do is immediately remove the physicality of the geometry and replace it with refraction. But the minute they do that, they admit then it's no longer a geometric horizon. Our very point, the thing that boats are supposed to go over. Because if what they say is true, then boats go over a geometric horizon, but they don't disappear because there's a geometric horizon that's in the middle ground or the foreground, and nobody can point it out. So it forces them down to admitting that the horizon is not a geometric horizon. It's a non-physical horizon that boats can't go over. Well, that's been their argument. If you look at the history of this argument, Aristotle said it donkeys years ago. He comes up all the time. But that's the best way to argue this argument. So even if you don't agree with us that it's strong or whatever, fine. Sit back and watch. But you're going to have to debunk us if you don't agree with us. If you think it's a white swan argument in some way, debunk the black swan argument against the ball first, because that's the bit you're going to have to do. Because it's logic supported with evidence, and it is proven that the horizon is not 1.2 miles away. So don't try and argue that it's a white swan flat earth proof, because, it is a white swan flat earth proof. There's loads of them knocking around.
Let's stop.
But there's not that many that directly smash the ball to bits because this one does.
Just before you reassert that three more times, that's the bit I was going to criticise you on at the end. So I'm sorry to interrupt. It's only because you started to repeat yourself. So no, to assert that because there's plenty of other images that demonstrate a geometric impossibility for a horizon, therefore there's lots of white swans. There is no way you can give me an explanation for why a horizon would be described as any kind of swan, unless there's an analogy attached to it. So if you go, well, it's just a white swan. Well, what do you mean? Why is this horizon analogous to a white swan? If you're arguing for flat earth proof or otherwise, explain to me how in analogy you can ever call a horizon a white swan. There's no purpose or meaning to it whatsoever. It's meaningless. But what it does do is also dilute the fact that we have a very strong argument that utilises a Karl Popper analogy, where the exception to the rule being the geometric understanding that everybody's under, that we're on a bloody sphere with a horizon that's physical for boats to go over. That's the white swan in analogy we've given, where we present something that counteracts that and debunks physical geometry. That would be a black swan. But to suddenly say, well, because you've got an example where the common understanding is a white swan and this is uncommon, well, I see this as quite common. Well, then you're just diluting an analogy and calling a horizon a swan for no reason at all. Why would you call a horizon a white swan? It makes no sense. which is why when 10th Man said on the pre-show, it's like, fine, let them talk about it. They're just looking silly. You are, because you won't be able to give me an analogy for a flat Earth proof image that makes sense to call it a white swan. It doesn't make any sense. The only reason it makes sense to them is because they're extrapolating out from the original analogy of black swans being geometric impossibilities, non-physical horizons as the Western world understands. So by analogy, the Western world might, 100 years ago, have thought, because everybody was under the same impression, that all swans were white. Currently, everybody thought, incorrectly, all horizons are geometric. Well, you go out into the real world, off this platform, out of echo chambers, that to say, yeah, we all know it's flat. Well, no, most people don't. Most people think all swans are white. Most people think the horizon's geometric. Most people still think they're on a sphere. That's still the argument here. So unless you're in some completely isolated flat earth community where you're all tapping each other on the back going, yeah, we understand it's always a flat earth horizon. Oh, well, that's wonderful. Shame about the rest of the Western world. All 99% of them who absolutely disagree with you and think all swans are white. All horizons being geometric, boats are going over them, buildings are being obscured by them. That's the whole point of the argument. And until such a day that people relinquish any notion whatsoever of us having a geometric physical horizon, until such a time, there'd be no point to disregard it and see it as commonplace. But when it becomes commonplace, you can't then use an analogy that something commonplace is a white swan. Because it doesn't make any sense by analogy. So, yeah, it demonstrates that there's plenty of people who don't understand the analogy and would rather rearrange the analogy into making a flat earth proof commonplace because they've captured lots of them. Well, good for you. In analogy, that's still lots and lots and lots of black swans. Because until the Western world appreciate that we don't have a geometric horizon, white swans are always going to be geometric horizons. Physical. That's the point here. They've shown us that Earth is a physical sphere with a physical horizon for boats to physically go over and be physically obscured by. That's the whole premise of their argument. And it's the argument that everybody, apart from us, we're the exception. We're the black swans. We're the exception to the rule. Because most people out there are the white swans under the understanding that we've got a globe Earth. So that's what we've got to focus on, rather than diluting our bloody argument that's absolutely watertight. You can't have a geometric horizon be loomed. It stops being geometric. So having a physical location on a globe is imperative. The whole mathematics is based on it. And that particular assumption requires a physical edge for boats to go over. We don't have one. And that's summed up and proven within the logical consistency. You can't suddenly start moving a physical location. So it started off with the obfuscation. We don't have an edge. Yeah, you better be damn sure you deny it quick sharp, because you have. You've definitely got a physical edge on a globe for boats to go over, and we've definitely debunked that with modus tollens. So let's be real about what's happening here. You know, let's not be prideful about who has debunked it and who hasn't. And well, we'd rather that crowd wasn't the ones that gave you a watertight argument that ended sphere geometry. So let's dilute the shit out of it. Call it a bloody white swan when that makes no sense in analogy. Because we're all locked up in echo chambers. We'll pat each other on the back and are of the understanding that everybody thinks the Earth's flat. And it's commonplace to have flat Earth horizons. Well, no. By perception and by general understanding of the Western world, no, they've all got sphere horizons. That's what we're trying to fight against. So let's not fight against us because we're debunking it and dilute down our arguments. Thank you. Shout out to Dearth.
Can you say concise?
It was concise. It was repetitive, not inconcise, inconsistent.
I think the best way to put it...
He was saying, can you say concise? Because that was pretty concise, yeah.
I think he was being sarcastic, actually. I think he was saying, can you not keep saying it over and over again? I'm excited, I'm pleased, I'm saying it with slight aggression, but with a smile on my face. Because on the one hand, this is a nice position to be in. A little bit of tussle on our own side. You've got to remember, this isn't costing any of our own side any sleep. Doesn't matter who we're talking about that maybe doesn't understand the analogy or the actual logical consistency. They're not losing sleep over it. So, it doesn't really matter. But it does, because we've still got to face the real fact of the world we live in and the people around us who definitely think they're living on a sphere. So let's just keep that in mind when we're trying to make our argument, which isn't the most simple argument. We're not going to claim it is. Did anybody think that an argument that would categorically, unequivocally debunk the globe was going to be really simple, just as easy as putting a picture up? No. Obviously, it requires a little bit more effort than that. An effort that Quantum Eraser has gone to through a process of thought that requires somebody to come along and debunk either the original premise of a globe, can't do that, can't take the logic apart on that standard, that's a total fail, or claim we've got two horizons, which we definitely don't, we've only got one, or claim the geometric horizon necessitated in a geometric model isn't geometric because it's loomed, ergo not geometric. So they're checkmated from about 4 different sides. So just recognise it, for God's sake. And hopefully, like me, I didn't get it straight away. The people who are going, oh, it's a white swan, really. It's so common that we have flat earth horizons. So common that everybody I go out and meet, I tell them, and they go, oh yeah, I already knew that we got a flat earth horizon. I recognise this glaring contradiction with the basic rhetoric we were born and brainwashed with. I recognise that all the time. No, people won't say that when you go out to them. So no, it's not the commonplace that people
Nathan,
understand non-geometric, non-physical horizons. That's not commonplace. Go on.
Nathan, what's a flat Earth horizon? That doesn't even really make sense.
No, like I say, by analogy, you can't describe a flat Earth horizon as a white swan. It makes absolutely no sense.
But we can describe a flat Earth horizon, though. We can say it's the point where the sky appears to meet the sea or the land.
Yeah, by definition, that is the horizon.
No, but that's the flat Earth horizon. I
that's
think
both.
that works because they always say,
both.
don't they, well, why can't you see Paris from New York? Well, aside from the fact that it would be like tiny and we don't have bionic eyes, and there's like something in the way called atmosphere, which acts like a fluid. It's like a layer of gas that distorts what we see. I mean, yeah, sure, if we had like Superman eyes and everything and perspective wasn't an issue and there was no atmosphere, you could, but that's not real world, is it? But what we can say is the sky does appear to meet the land, and it doesn't actually do that. So that is a totally consistent interpretation for a flat Earth horizon. Not consistent on a ball, though.
Yeah, the only difference between those two things, the apparent position where the sky appears to meet the physical ground on a globe, that's a geometric horizon. Well, the apparent position where the sky seems to, all these redundant terms, meet the ground and changes with optics and clarity of air, well, that's got no physicality attached to it whatsoever. This is the basis of the argument. They're arguing physicality and geometry, spherical geometry, to the ground we stand upon. Now, every measurement we take shows it's flat, but they still want to argue it by hijacking the optics of it and turning the optics into geometry. Well, once you've removed optics, flipped it on its side into orthographic view, and claimed physicality to horizons, there's no turning back and engineering in the refraction values. They are geometric equations to give you these amounts that bend around the physical geometry. But the physical geometry remains the same. It's based on a fixed R value. And you've still got an X in their model marking the point of the horizon. And that horizon's geometric. It's a geometric model with a physical edge to obscure things in the distance. Until you debunk it. Then it's not that anymore. That's the crux of this matter. No longer do we have geometry to Earth claimed to be a sphere. My God, why isn't everybody embracing this?
Johnny?
Yeah, I think maybe it takes a bit of time. So the first thing is maybe to ask every globe earther, where do you think on this picture is a geometric horizon, which I think you've been doing, the panel has been doing, and that's where you can see them sort of start to sweat. You know, before having to go into, well, not to say before, but I think that's a starting point. Show me the geometric horizon and then go from there.
Nathan, I've just realised when you asked that question then, you said, why aren't people supporting this? That's actually a logically fallacious argument. It's actually an appeal to motive fallacy. You can't question their motives, but you can point out that well, there is an issue here. We can't appeal to their motives, but we can point out that there might be an issue here. Can't really ask that question because we
Hey,
can't.
Anthony.
Well
Anthony.
done. Well spotted. Kudos,
Anthony.
Go
Anthony,
on.
your forte is law, right? You studied law?
Yeah, and evidence.
Yeah. So if the evidence points to something, what do you call that?
It depends on how strong the evidence is. There's different
Let's
types.
say very strong.
Yeah, if it points to something with a strong set of evidence with it, it becomes, well, you start after weighing up the evidence and start looking at the weaknesses in the evidence if it's strong. And that's what we're supposed to be doing now. Look at, because you can't just assume that it's strong just because it appears to be strong. But the absence of counter evidence or counter arguments or counter logic from the ballers kind of leaves it hanging in the sense that, well, where is the alternative arguments, or where is the alternative evidence? Where's that horizon that we must be getting?
Get
wrong?
him 10th.
Hang on.
Get him 10th.
I'm going to get you here, Anthony. You have a jury. You have a judge. You have the law. If they're going to convict somebody for 99 years in prison or even to a death sentence, they must have evidence to do that. Am I right?
Yeah.
Okay. The evidence is the key. So forget the motive. Who cares why he killed that person? We have evidence he killed that person. So you judge by the evidence.
That's true.
Yeah, but that's not
Okay.
applicable. That's not applicable to this case. That's not applicable to this case. Well, hold on a second. The evidence is already established. So it's not an appeal to motive or intent fallacy if you question their understanding or their motives after the fact. So it's not an appeal to motive or intent fallacy. The argument is laid out. It's very simple. And if they don't catch the argument and they try to dilute it, then the appeal to motive intent fallacy goes by the wayside. It's not fallacious. There's a rooster in the hen house. In other words, thanks.
Yeah, if it's happened, there is a reason. Knowing the reason, yeah, okay, you could argue that, Anthony, but there's obviously going to be a reason behind it. Now, I'm still going to back Huey when he gave, I've forgotten whose razor it is now. Don't attribute to malice. Who is it? Hamlin's. Hamlin's razor?
Hanlon.
Hanlon's.
Hanlon. Hanlons. Hanlon's razor.
Hanlon's razor. So don't attribute to malice what can be accounted for by stupidity or ignorance. Yeah.
Well, personally, to me, one of the biggest, and I know I probably sound like a broken record, I keep repeating it, but biggest evidence to me that this argument is detrimental to their side is their change of position on their argument. Because again, years and years, we never heard anything about multiple horizons. We know they never argued for that, right? All of a sudden, they do. So what is the changing factor? Is it because of tell me what it is, Riley?
It was Rumpus when he contacted Andrew Thomas Young, and Andrew Thomas Young told him that he couldn't refer to looming anymore because he had it wrong. After all the time he's been telling us about super looming, and the Rumpus now has been told by Andrew Thomas Young that he can't use looming anymore because of historical reasons, which he was a bit wishy-washy on. He hasn't really explained it. I have asked him what was the email. See the email for why he said you can't do it, because I want to make sure that Rumpus gets it right and he applies it consistently. But he hasn't presented.
He has. I've heard it in clips. So the reason Andrew Thomas gave him was because he should be describing it as standard refraction. And this was already covered on the very first presentation QE did and when he presented Andrew Thomas Young's information, which is to say that when you move over to the actual description that they've been giving till now, it's standard refraction based on geometry 7/6r, also known as terrestrial refraction. That's what he's describing. The effects of light bending around the physical geometry of the sphere based on its r value 7/6r. Terrestrial refraction, also known as standard refraction. Not looming, standard refraction. based on the geometry, which we've debunked. So this was already seen well before Rumpus disclosed his error. QE spotted it, disclaimed it, and gave it to the audience as a defence already. Here's the information on what they describe as looming from their alma mater, this Thomas Young dude. Now here's what he says about refraction. Here's what he says about terrestrial refraction, standard refraction, geometrically based on the physicality of the sphere they're arguing with its, guess what, physical horizon. Total fail. So it's already there for you to find yourself exactly as QE did. Now these sorts of things that QE has obviously gone into and researched before he even formulated the logical consistency, that's work. You know, he's covered all of his bases. He's done it properly. So to the people out there, again, I've got to stress this, who just come across it and go, oh yeah, great proof, yeah, just another white swan. Try and pay attention to the fact that lots of work's gone into this to make it undebunkable, rather than just going, oh yeah, cursory glance, this just looks like another flat earth proof, so I'll call it a white swan, there's loads of them.
You know, this situation kind of reminds me of when a certain Glober went to have a certain interview with somebody named George Musser to try to back him up on his claim that gravity isn't a force. And George Musser stuck to his guns and said, clearly that it's not in this mainstream narrative that we're dealing with. So it kind of sounds like the same thing, almost a little bit worse though, because now this argument, if people haven't noticed, has forced somebody like the Rumpus, who has argued with us for years about how he has never argued. Now he has to change his position about how he has never argued that the geometric horizon is physical, and now has had to refer back to the subject matter expert, Mr. Andrew Thomas Young, I think his name is, and had to be told that he's been using the word looming wrong after all this time. And looming is the one thing that they've been trying to use to rebut this argument. So if that doesn't stand out to people...
So what is looming though?
Looming is an atmospheric effect that describes things moving with respect to the horizon, according to Rumpus's own words about 2.5 years ago. And that's the description given by Andrew Thomas Young on his website. It's the description of an atmospheric effect. The problem is...
Hang on.
Hold on, just let me get to the end. The problem is, this isn't an atmospheric effect being described, and that's what Andrew Thomas Young has explained to Rumpus. What you need to be explaining is the begging the question fallacy that is on steroids with 7/6R. You're going to be assuming geometric horizons, therefore assume refraction based on that geometry. Don't talk about actual atmospheric effects, because it makes no sense to loom the horizon above the horizon. Obviously, I'm now paraphrasing, but he's told Rumpus, just beg the question. Automatically assume R. It's terrestrial refraction you're describing, also known as standard refraction, as disclaimed by Rumpus. That bit's definitely based on his own words, Rumpus's own words. So yeah, he's told him straight, just beg the question and assume R. Don't take the actual effect of the horizon, that's supposed to be geometric, and loom it above itself. That's non sequitur, as we've been telling him. Well, instead, assume R, use 7/6R, or change the value based on the radius, which is giving you your geometric horizon. Don't base it in actual reality, base it on the geometry and beg the question. What's wrong with you, man? You've got to beg the question. That's what he's told him.
Let me re-answer that in a different way. In the Skunk Bay footage, which I'm sure we've all seen, we see stretching and shrinking, squashing and stretching, whatever you want to call it. But the name for what we see in that Skunk Bay footage is called towering and stooping. Looming is their version of towering and stooping. Well, we see towering and stooping because we see stretch and shrink, right? We see it. That's an but they need an alternative because that's based on straight lines. And Rumpus likes to tell people that light never travels in straight lines. So therefore, he dismisses that because he doesn't want that to apply. But the problem he's got is, well, we do have straight lines. Light does travel in straight lines. It deviates from straight to a negligible amount. that isn't enough for you to negate that light doesn't travel in straight lines, because it does. What Rumpus needs to be able to show, demonstrate, prove is that light will follow a curved path in the atmosphere, because he needs looming, the equivalent argument on their model, to explain what's going on, but he needs to demonstrate it. Now, if you think about Dang Joss' video with the butane gas going over that curve, they're extreme examples of what doesn't happen in the atmosphere, because we don't have liquid butane in the atmosphere. We have negligible amounts of temperature fluctuations. So he's never going to get anything similar in the atmosphere. But there's other examples where Greater Sapien, the guy that stole $20,000 and no one batters an eyelid about, he demonstrated with an ice cube that he could make light bend. But we don't have temperature fluctuations that severe in the atmosphere either. But Rumpus needs to show that it curves in the atmosphere, and he can't do it. So until he can show that it curves, he can't even have looming, because looming is just another word for towering and stooping. But instead of relying on straight lines, which we all know that light deviates from to negligible.
No, it's not. Looming is not towering and stooping.
It's there. That's what Rumpus described it as. He described it as their version. That's how he
Rumpus needs to be institutionalized. Looming is not towering and stooping. Sorry.
That's how he described it in that hangout with Al K. I listened to him say it.
I don't care.
We've already established he doesn't understand it, Anthony, so let's not paraphrase what he's misunderstanding, because he clearly doesn't understand and he's been corrected. But what he's been corrected with and told to do is assume light travels in a curved path by way of assuming a curved path with 7/6 R standard refraction. He made that clear. What he's been told to do is beg the question and assume that the atmosphere is bent and the light is bending with it. That's precisely what he did on his most recent presentations. Simply beg the question now. Don't assert an atmospheric effect. Beg the question. Assume the atmosphere is bent around a spherical Earth, all with a begging the question R value. So don't talk about looming. That's not what it is, Rumpus. Just beg the question. Use standard refraction. Bend it around the geometry we're assuming with R in this model that isn't air. It's a model. And the air we claim is in the model will be bent based on the geometry that they don't have anymore. He's screwed. Rumpus knows it. Andrew Thomas Young is just confirming what he needs to do to solve this problem. To solve this problem as a glober, you must beg the question of an R value. And the R value gives you a geometric horizon that's physical. We don't have that. This doesn't solve the problem. So they're screwed. It's another checkmate.
Precisely.
Yeah, I wouldn't be quoting Rumpus anytime soon. He was caught saying that when you step outside your house and there's a tree in front of you, that tree is refracting.
Yeah. In his model, I've just said, when you assume terrestrial refraction, you assume Earth has a curved surface and the atmosphere is wrapped around it in a curved manner. Now, therefore, everything in their model's always looming. Doesn't matter what it is, nothing's where it's supposed to be. It's a world of fantasy because we don't live on a curved surface. We've proven that because the curved surface they claim is based on the geometry that we no longer have. Hey, Adam.
That should be late. Afternoon, gents, ladies, whoever's in the house.
Adam, how can we communicate to the people on our own side that we're debunking the physical geometry asserted in the model with the black swan?
I don't know. I'm trying to do so.
Maybe
I don't know. Is the honest answer. I'm coming up the same thing. The lack of support, or the need to comment that I'm hearing appears to not be recognising the significance to me still. I don't think people have fully got what's being said.
Grammarly.
Yeah, I found the same, Adam. And my acid test has been asking. It's only been a couple of people, maybe 3 people that have come to me so far privately and said, normally about us moaning about our own side, changing it to a white swan. They're like, "What's your problem? So what?" And my rebuttal is to say, "Okay, fine. If you're typically they're saying, look, we're on your side," which is great. You want to hear that, but by the same token, my response to them is, "Can you give me the argument back? Just explain to me." in modus tollens would be great, but the general gist of the logical argument we've put forth, if you can give me that, I'll then accept that you understand it, and that when you say you're on my side because you understand my argument. Our argument, I'm just saying, when I've spoken to people personally. So that's what I've asked, and so far not so good.
Nathan, I don't want to keep beating the issue, but let me say it one more time from my perspective. We have communicated it perfectly, properly.
Well, no, we haven't, have we?
Let me finish, please. The evidence will show that there's a collector's edition. There's all these other shows. Today's show, we are effectively communicating what it is. Now, what they do with it is up to them, but it's not because we have not communicated it effectively. I'm done.
Agreed.
Well, go ahead, Adam, and then I've got something to add to that. Go ahead.
If I was to, I'm not criticising hers or anyone, but I think if you was to look at that from a management point of view, and that's a team, and your team doesn't understand something, and management stance says, well, it's not my problem, I've effectively communicated it. Actually, you may be able to sit there thinking I've effectively communicated. You haven't. So maybe
or they're not our team.
Well, no, let me finish. The question is, what do you want to achieve? And that should guide your next actions for me. Not
look, I watch
what have I done and why my motivation was there, but really it's not about that. It's about what we're trying to do, guys, and what do we need to do next then? If this hasn't worked, what do we need to do next to try and hopefully get those that are on our side grasping it fully, and if not supporting us, then maybe not downgrading it. That's all I would hope to achieve.
May I chime in again?
Yeah, go on.
Yeah, of course, man.
Okay, let me chime in again. I live in the real world. Team has a coach and players. The coach has a play. They practice it all week. They go out to do it, and say one or two members of the team don't do it properly. So they go back and say, look, man, we practiced this thing all week. Why did you not follow the instruction? Let's do it again until you get it. So during practice, they do it to where everyone knows they got it. Then they go play again, and they don't do it again. So the coach says, trade this guy. He's not part of our team. That's real world sports and the drama that goes with sports all the time. We have communicated this properly. It could prove one of two things. And you brought in the word team and management. So here's what it proves. They're not part of the team.
Well, let me continue that analogy then. I would suggest, Team Flat Earth Debate has been working on set plays hard all week. And what we've done now is gone and had a look at Team Globebusters when they've been playing, and they've not followed our plays. But we know them perfectly. And they should know them perfectly.
Yeah. Hold on.
Okay.
Hold on, Adam. Hold on.
I'm not justifying.
Hold on, just one sec. There's a disconnect. Hold on. There's a slight difference in analogy now, isn't there?
Yeah. Exactly.
What 10th Man's saying is team with a circle around Globebusters, Ballbusters, anybody else talking about this subject. There's a big circle around all of us, and we're all on one field, and our opposition is Globe. That's the teams as they've been laid out in analogy by 10th Man. Then you've got the teams laid out very differently now, haven't you, Adam? You've got circles around Ballbusters and circles around Globebusters and circles around other people. And you're saying they should be following our team's play when they go out on the rink after us.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's
okay.
That. If we're talking about using that analogy to real life, I think that's probably a little closer. They've not been training all week, have they? We've been training all week, and then we're staying there. Oh, you lot, we've got the best plays, and you're not using them right, you plums. And they're going, well, and it appears to me, they don't know the plays. They don't know the benefit of it. From when they do try and use it, they're not doing it right.
Let me finish.
But that's exactly.
Hold on, Chocolate. Hold on.
Go ahead,
10th Man.
Yeah, well, while we're going back and forth, I've seen in sports when the team comes up with a play and they start whooping the competition with it, the other teams copy it. They don't change it.
Yeah,
that's good.
that was just going to be my point. I was just going to say, like, it's a little weird then when another team that's supposed to be on the same side as you takes the play that you came up with that was awesome and says, that play's okay. It's just a regular play. Even though it's winning you the Super Bowl and shit. It's just a regular everyday play. But you haven't seen how this play has made the other team have to completely change their offense, their defense, their entire strategy. That's what people aren't getting.
Do you remember a few weeks back on Ballbusters, and I said, I said, you're going to have to watch how our side react on this, because I realised that it took me time to get my head around it, because I wasn't taught logic in school. Most people weren't taught logic in school because we went to state schools. And it's not often that I get arguments that are presented based on logic, but with evidence that goes with it, formed in a logical argument. And it was quite new to me, I'll admit it. It's not something I've had to think about before. And then when I was presented this, it took me a couple of days and a couple of conversations with Nathan to see how strong it actually is, and just tweak it in my mind and play around with it and just see if I could see problems with it. And I couldn't see anything with it. And I was like, I must be missing it. Maybe I'm just getting this wrong. Maybe it's my own ignorance here. So I was reluctant to commit anything to it. And I'm sure Nathan was kind of in the same ballpark for a day or two right at the start. But the reality is a lot of our side are still in this. And it's really simple. If the Earth's a sphere, there's got to be a geometric horizon. It varies with height, and we should be able to see it because boats are supposed to go over it, and we can't see that. So it can't be a sphere. It's that simple. It just gets complicated when we start using the phrase modus tollens and then start talking about P's and Q's. But the reality is that the basic argument is really fundamentally simple. Just remember the sign argument, and we'll always be okay with it.
To continue the analogy, it's kind of from talking to chocolate, just to continue the analogy, it is, right? Those guys are here, right? We've got these plays for gridiron, for American football, a real good contact sport, right? And the people we're trying to hand the plays on, they're not playing American football. They're not playing a contact sport.
Right, they're playing two-hand touch.
I thought
I'm done with the
Globebusters-
analogies.
Yeah, okay. Well, then in that analogy, I see a big hole.
No, I see. Hold on. Let me just try and expand on Adam. Adam's been the closest so far in analogy. The thing I was going to summarise before we ran out of live time was to say that the thing when Adam's analogy is played out with circles around us and other people all in separate circles, that essentially is saying we're not all on the same team. That's basically what that's saying. Now, in your analogy, when you've got a play that's been played out in American football, and you're saying, well, they're not playing American football. Well, no, they're the commentators in the stands, but the commentators haven't recognised the play that they've just watched.
Yeah, that's even better.
Okay. So they are not playing the same sport. To me, doesn't make sense in an analogy. No disrespect to Adam at all, because they are saying that we are against the sphere, and FED is saying we're against the sphere, and we have this play, this modus tollens, this proof that is so logical that it negates a globe. So they can't have what they say they have. And your show is called Globe Busters, and we have proof that can't be a globe, and we're not playing the same sport. Then change your name.
Easy, Tiger. Easy. Any more for any more?
I check. Hello.
Hey, Brian.
Hello, Nathan. Hey, everybody.
All into this, Brian.
Everyone's got to have the last word. Who's having it?
I might say something small just before it finishes. The problem with the people who aren't getting on board with this is that they're trying to prove what type of gravity is.
Yeah.
That's where their heads are at, and that's the problem. They're not. They don't realize. They just don't know. They literally. That's where they're at. I can't put it any simpler than that. They're trying to prove what type of gravity is. So they're still in that. They're still stuck in a loop. You know, either they get on board or get left behind. You know, one or the other.
And with that, I'll say if you are watching this on the Nathan Oakley premiering stream, then stay tuned, as there will be an after show to follow. Unfortunately, if you're watching this live on Nathan Oakley 1980, this is where we bid you farewell. Massive thanks to both Discord and G Plus panels for making this live show possible. I've been Nathan Oakley. Stay tuned if you're watching on the Nathan Oakley channel, and I'll see you all in the next video.
Oh, what a day! What a lovely day!
I might say something there about looming if anyone wants to hear
Sure.
it. Looming by the other day with Rumpus, I was having kind of a one-on-one in the end on Ranties with him the other day, and I made 2 points to him. That caused him bother. Number one was that the claim that, like, because from his side, the claim is that light gets bent down by the denser air that's close to the ground and the sea. Now, whether that's true or not, right? The thing about that is that disproves all looming, right? And he didn't like this because the problem with that is that if light is bent down by the denser medium that's close to the land and to the sea, then for us to see that in the horizontal, which would be looming over a geometric horizon, because we have to see that in the horizontal, it would mean that it's loomed up above with respect to the horizon. For us to see that in the horizontal would mean that that has to leave the denser medium or the denser end of the air that's close to the ground and come up into a less dense part of the atmosphere for us to see this. But the whole reason that it's bent down is because of the density of the air that's close to the land and ocean. So consequently, that in itself completely disproves all looming as far as the globe goes, or in general anyway.
Yeah, and he's been told by his alma mater that he shouldn't be using the word looming. He should merely beg the question and assume the R value, and then take a claim to be atmospheric measurement that's actually assuming the geometry of the model in the first instance. So when he's saying looming, he should be saying terrestrial refraction or standard refraction, same thing, which is to assume the radius and then bend light around it. So he's not correctly begging the question. That's what he's been told.
Yeah,
I said to him
that
the other day,
seems disingenuous by Andrew Young because, if I may say, it seems disingenuous because to have that level of bending clearly shown by the black swans and other observations, it can't be standard refraction because you're seeing quote unquote much further. So why would Andrew Thomas Young now be saying don't say looming? It's kind of like a backpedal, right?
I said to him the other day, this really made him annoyed, and it seems to have hit a nerve with a lot of the ballers because the amount of negativity in the comment section underneath Randy's video from the other day is phenomenal. I said to him, I said, if light is bending down, right, because of a denser medium of air close to the surface, I said that makes sense for the observations we get, because we see objects, whether it be lighthouses, mountains, whichever, at a great distance, but 4 times out of 5 we don't get to see the bottom of it. We might sometimes only get to see half of it, and maybe 1 time out of 5 in an observation we get to see all of it. I said, so that makes sense over a long distance, that over a flat plane, that we're seeing objects way further than we would be able to if we were on a globe with a 3959 radius. But what we're seeing is 4 times out of 5 we're not seeing the bottoms, and that's because the light is not reaching the bottom of those objects at a distance on that particular day. And he did not like that at all, because I just took exactly what they were saying, what he keeps on saying, and they keep on showing these tests in with sugar water and bending laser lights up the way, so they bend back down the way, making a curve. Mick West does it, Rumpus did it. They're all doing it like that. Instead of just horizontally putting the light through, and it'll still bend down. And if that's happening in our atmosphere, then that totally explains why sometimes we're missing for some observations, why we're missing the bottom of things at a distance.
That's correct. So what they've done up until now, the whole purpose of them talking educatedly about atmospheric effects, actual atmospheric effects, was so that at some point during the conversation they could substitute in geometric measurements utilising R. So they have to sound at least reasonably intelligent and educated about the effects of atmosphere so they can substitute in R. Now that was always caught in debate. Now they don't have R. And the end of the road is to go back to the person that's given you all of these refractive effects that you argue about and say, how do I explain the horizon not being in the correct position? Well, you use terrestrial refraction. Just assume standard refraction. You know, bend the light around a presupposed bent atmosphere around a bent Earth with the R value. That's what you do. Well, what if we don't have the R value because the geometry's broken and we don't have a geometric horizon? Well, they're going to go round and round in circles trying to solve a problem that is not solvable. They can't move the geometric horizon. It's physical. That's the whole argument they've got with us. Earth being a physical sphere? Well, as soon as you start saying, well, the physicality of it's going to... No, that's... You can't have a geometric anomaly, as QE puts it so beautifully. You can't have the geometry, the physicality of it suddenly change. If you're talking about optical effects, you're no longer talking about geometry. So, every time they try and get away from this with looming or standard refraction or any other effect, they're either begging the question and it doesn't solve the problem because the R value they're basing their assumption of bendy light around bendy atmospheres around a bendy Earth, begging the question on steroids, has a terrestrial ground level with an X marked on it that's called the horizon. It's geometric, physical, and you can't get away from that. They don't have two of them. So looming it up to a different position, well, it's not geometric then. So it's game over in every avenue.
Yeah,
you gotta love the irony, right?
Yeah.
They get told to use the same 7/6R, the same radius value, to defend this argument that gets destroyed in this very argument. It's beautiful.
Yeah, they have to concede our positions. Say it's no longer geometric, it's optical. Well, then it's not geometric, that's our argument. We win. Oh, no. The geometric one is loomed up. It's still geometric. Well, no, it isn't if it's not in the position that it's geometrically in. That's what geometry is, the physicality of its location that you're measuring and claiming. Earth's supposed to have this geometry. If it doesn't have this geometry, it doesn't have this geometry! You've lost!
Hey, Nathan.
Yes?
Nathan. Yeah, yes. Hey, we got What's It Gets It, Globebuster here, and I've been talking to him in voice chat. And he said something profound. I don't want to, speak for him. So, What's It? Is your mic working?
Sure. Yeah. So the way that I see this is the logic in the argument is infallible, right? Okay, and everyone understands that it is the globe Earth's black swan. So that is really independent of the flat Earth swans. So the way that I see this is it's not about the argument. And so it's I only know so much. I cannot address the history between people, any personal situations or anything like that, right? So I mean, there's only so much I feel like I can do, and I mean I'll just be bluntly honest about it. I don't think that the declaration did much to help, and I of course wouldn't be offended by something like that, but again, I can only speak for myself. So the way I'm trying to see this here is there's got to be a middle ground, because both platforms are super impactful from our general side, and just the premise in general should be embraced, right? So, but of course I'm brand new and I can only do so much, and I don't know anything else that's gone on. So the way, again, so I guess really not to talk too much, and I just kind of went in a big circle, but what I'm trying to say is I think it's pretty clearly beyond the arguments. I don't think that anyone can deny the logical consistency in the argument. I mean, it's irrefutable, right? Or they can't even offer a rebuttal. So whatever needs to be done to try to bridge that, I'm willing to do whatever I can to help it, but I don't know if I can do it by myself.
Yeah, I agree with
Appreciate
you.
that, sir. Thank you.
Yeah, so I mirrored a video by Eagle Plane and Anchor where he basically chopped out the section where you declared war on Karen B. And I think that's what you mean by the declaration, am I correct?
Yeah, that's what made it not very easy for me. So, because what I was going to do is just, not even mention it really, and then just speak up on the show, right? But then unfortunately, that got introduced to where it had to be addressed prior to that organic approach that I wanted to take. And it put me in a situation where it's like it was perceived as, although I was going to try to mediate, that was a doubling down of the argument, right, or the more so the personal aspect of it. And so at that point, I can't really divulge what anyone entrusted to say to me, but it just made it much more difficult.
No, I
You feel me?
understand. So I owe Sleeping Warrior £1. So it's political. It's not an understanding thing. You were right. I was wrong, Anthony.
No, that's the way I see it. I don't see how else it could be, right? Because I mean, it's real petty, in my opinion, about the way you interpret the analogy. I don't think anyone isn't grasping that. I could be wrong, I guess, but it doesn't seem like it's difficult to grasp it, right? It's the globe Earth's black swan. This cannot exist. Not even this anomaly or this observation cannot exist even once. It cannot even have one of its kind, right? That's clearly the premise here, and I think that it's very important we run with that narrative. Branding, it's even better. We have black swan memes, right? That's the way this works. It's an information battle. And so when people can spam black swan memes, and even all these random globe earthers they know what that term means. That's only a good thing,
That's a phraseology that I think will solve this problem, which it gets it. So that's something I haven't said, and I will from now on. Copyright Nathan Oakley. I'm pretty sure I thought of that first, actually. So it's the globe Earth's black swan. That's beautiful, mate. That's an excellent way of putting it.
Yeah, exactly. Perfect. And then that pretty definitively clears that up. Right.
Yeah,
so
it does.
Whatever goes beyond that, it will be very translated.
That's very useful. It's the globe Earth's black swan. Yeah, very well put. Copyright Nathan Oakley.
Could I just quickly address the declaration? Because it was something I applauded QE for the other day, something that I said I've never witnessed him do before, and something that, whilst the declaration has been touted around and sent around, what doesn't appear to have happened is the recording the following day, where John came on, was given some understanding and retracted his statement, and I was where kind of said, sorry, that's not, I'll take that back, and removed the declaration. Now, for me, that was quite a concession, and very and I'm not being horrible here, but very on QE-like, and seems to have gone unnoticed, yet the standard comments are being repeated, and I think that's maybe something that may have been missed.
Nah, that's just media. You don't focus on the concession afterwards, do you? You focus on the devastating bit that you want to focus on. So that's just the way it works in media, I would say. The retraction gets straight to page 37, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So that's what it'll do mentally in the minds of others. That's why I relabeled it. So I saw Eagle Plane and Anchor put that video out, and I was like, oh God, that's just stirring the pot. He's saying QE's declared war, and by the time he'd published it, QE had already, as you rightly point out, retracted it and gone, no, I think I was a bit too hasty, I shouldn't be declaring war on my own side. And even on today's show, he's like, no, let them. If they want to call it a white swan, fine, let them. They're just going to look silly, but let them do it. I'm not going to declare a war on them for them making themselves look silly. Well, I took his video, mirrored it, and relabeled it the 24-hour war, and kind of foolishly, like you're saying, I assume people recognise that it was literally a 24-hour period when we're saying we need to, smack the arses of our own side to get them to recognise this. And in reality, we're not their coach. They're not playing on our field. We have got different circles around us. So it's arrogant. I'm sorry about this 10th man. I know it's going to get your blood boiling. For us to say you should be following our plays. Because who are we to tell them what to do? On the other hand, it's what 10th man says is if you're around the stadium watching those plays absolutely annihilate the opposition, surely that would make you prick your ears up and want a piece of that. But it doesn't mean that we should have to shove it down their throats or demand that they understand it. Who's making that noise on Discord?
I got him. I got him going.
May I respond?
Yeah, go ahead, 10th man. I was just finding out who's making the clicking sound through my noise, so hopefully you don't get the same.
No, I heard it too. Precisely how you ended it is exactly right. But the accusation that I want them to be on the same team and the way you phrase it, can you rephrase that again? Because I don't think that's what I did.
Well, I'm saying if your suggestion is that we're all on the same field, we're all on the same team, and we're all fighting against the same opponent, which is an ideal situation we don't have, then it would be assumed that we have a coach in this situation, an analogy, it's QE, who's reading out the plays to the entire team. And then part of the team isn't following the plays. Where I'm saying that Adam's analogy is more akin to them watching. They might be a team that might one day play on the same field, maybe even with the same opponents. But it doesn't mean that they're, when watching, recognising how good it is, or that they've been told by the coach, or that they have to do anything our coach says in this analogy.
Okay. No, I got you. But that's wrong. That's not addressing how I see it. What I see is, of the little bit that I have heard, those UK boys, those flat earth debate UK boys, and they have mentioned from that point of view that we're part of taking down the globe, but we're this separate UK boy club. Okay, so by their own words, they have some association with the Nathan Oakley group and et cetera, et cetera. So my point is this. It's not that I expect them or want them or force them. I'm not like that at all, whatsoever. I don't force anything on anybody. But the reality is, if you're going to refer to us as the UK boys that are fighting the globe, and you guys are the US globebusters fighting the globe, and this play comes out, this Black Swan comes out, and your obvious response to it is what is clearly causing all this drama, then I just go by the evidence. Something is wrong here. How can you say, not us, but or me, how can you say we're on the same team? So I'm saying it about
let me
thinking.
Sorry.
Yeah, so
let me just take the analogy a little further.
Hold on, 10th man, just 1 sec. We've got a globebuster here who can respond directly to you, so go ahead, Witzik.
Sure. If you were to take the analogy a little further, maybe two teams from the same state playing football, whatever it is. Okay, well, we're on technically different squads, right? But it's the same ultimate goal, whatever it is. And so we're watching the game, like you're saying, and we see this play is dismantling the other team, okay? And so I'm sitting there with my team, and I'm like, wow, I'm definitely going to take that play. It's well orchestrated, it's concise, it's damning, right? Okay, I like the analogy, I like the straight to the point approach. I'm going to take it, and I have done that, right? I have constantly been flat smacking people with the Black Swan and the terminology. Okay, now if someone else on my team refuses to ever run that play, right? I can't do anything about that. But if we get to a point where we're going to force me to be like, oh well, now I have to pick their play over who's already on this team over here that isn't going with the play, then it's making, for example, in this situation, it's like where I feel like I'm having to figure out the best way to not make this catastrophic, or it's not a big deal, bro, to me. But
May I
to try to
respond?
mediate.
May I respond?
Sure, yeah.
All right.
Please.
Karen B, if that's the same individual that was with Mark Sargent talking about this, and then later, when approached by Arwen, said that she didn't fully understand the argument when she spoke. Well, I accept that. So come out and address it the way it's supposed to be, if you really had that conversation with Arwen. Because what QE did was spend a lot of time an effort to put the modus tollens together. Then he gave it freely to everybody on every team. It's like, here's the biggest play, but every team could have it if you choose to have it. Now, if they don't want to have it, I have no problem. But don't go on air and change it and don't think you're going to get pushback.
Sure, yeah,
That's
I
the
can't
real world.
disagree with that.
That's the real world. So I don't care
Yeah,
if
but
they
I do.
run
I
it.
mean, you have to see from both sides. I mean, I don't know that, for one, that's just one individual, right? And that has evolved into a as if it was a
No, I
monolith,
listened to
like a
Jaron. I
singular
listened to Bob.
representation.
No, it's not one. I listened to Jaron minimize it. I listened to Bob minimize it on the recording of their show. So it's not just one individual, and they're the head of their show minimizing. They're doing exactly what Karen B did, and so Kiwi gives it freely, and then they go change it. We don't have the right to call them on it. We don't have the right to say
Okay,
no.
but
You
here
changed
again, you're
that.
skipping over the crucial component that there was a vocalized declaration of war, and then I said that I was going to mediate. It was mentioned in our chat. I said, okay, offered to mediate with the situation. So, like, trying to pursue that, like I was keeping my
mediate.
word. And then from their impression, after that, then it was doubled down on to still, propagate the declaration of war. At that point, me, the brand new guy, cannot really do much. That's kind of like my point.
Your attempt to mediate is honorable, and I thank you for that. But this goes back to a while back ago, I think. It all stems back to the ring laser gyro, unfortunately.
Well, hang on, just playing devil's advocate for a sec. I know that Karen's admitted publicly that she doesn't watch the show anymore. So if she says that she didn't really follow the argument or didn't understand the argument, at least at face value initially, I can understand why she would not get it if she's not been watching the show. So we could say it 50 times. If she's not seen it and doesn't understand it, that makes sense. I'm not defending her. I'm just saying that that's the other side to the story.
Why would you
fine,
go ahead and
but that's fine. That's
evaluate
an
it
admission.
then? Hold on. Why would you then go ahead and evaluate it on two shows, directly contradict yourself if you don't understand it? That's my problem. It's not my problem anymore. Listen, I declared war because a police action didn't have the same pizzazz. So, my bad. Over.
And of course, I certainly didn't get offended. I was laughing, bro. I laughed. I laughed at the video, right? Because I'm just like that. But you can only represent yourself. You feel me? And so, I mean, it is what it is. I agree that why would you? Well, personally, the way I feel, if anyone in this community has created a nice argument, I'm like, thanks for the ammo. I'll throw it in the arsenal. That's just as far as it goes for me.
Right.
I think everyone
Makes
gets
sense.
that. I think what people are missing is that it's not so much the argument. We all kind of get half the argument. The only thing we're asking is that you present it the way that we're presenting it. And that seems to be met with resistance and fighting and negativity. And it's like, we're not asking you to agree. If you don't agree, just don't support it. Just keep quiet. But if you are going to talk about it the way we've asked you to talk about it, not the opposing way. We're not pushing it as a flat earth proof. We're pushing it as a ball earth killer because it's the stronger position of the two. And for some reason, it seems to be rejected because they don't like that for some reason. And I don't get why. If we're all really on the same team, argue it. We're the ones that are pushing it. We're the ones taking the risk. If we're wrong, we're wrong. And I'm sure it'll come out in the long run. But at least present it the way we're presenting it, because we're the ones pushing it. For some reason, it doesn't want to go in. It's weird.
Well, actual science seeks to understand truth, not disprove things they don't think are true.
This isn't a scientific argument.
Nice argument.
Not a scientific argument. How many times we got to tell you?
5 more.
Yeah, it's not getting through. We're not telling you again. Get on board or get out.
Spoken like a true truth seeker.
Shut up.
RC, not today, man. Not today.
Yeah, not today. Sorry about that. What's it? If you wanted to follow up on any thoughts that you might have, go ahead.
Well, I think there's great power in presenting it as refutation. That's what it is. That's what we should do. So and I've said that from the beginning. I just so a lot of people told me come check this out. Of course, coincidentally, that's when this happened. The first time I really watched one of the full lives, the full shows, I heard it. And I mean, I agree. And I was saying it from the beginning. I had already been going around flat smacking people with it, because I think it's just so concise. That's its value to me. It's so concise and it refutes their model. Once you can, just like Nathan's been saying, once you can rip the geometry out of it, I mean, what can they do? All you just watch them squirm at that point, and everything they revert back to, they don't even realize it's futile pursuit. You've already refuted the geometry of it. So I agree 1,000,000% with the premise.
What's it? You said you're new, right?
Do what?
You said you were new to ball busters, angular busters, or altogether flat Earth thing. What do you mean by you were new?
I'm new to globe busters. I've been looking into the Earth for 4 years.
Okay. So how did
he
you
technically is the newest globe buster.
Okay.
Trying to tell you.
No, I know. So how, by your own admission, you got it right away and you're flat smacking people with it. So the question is, how is it that you, who are new to globe busters, get it right away and are using it properly as a black swan against the globe? But the people who run globe busters don't get it. And they've been around longer and know more arguments than you and me put together. They didn't get it right away, but you got it right away. That's the problem, isn't it?
Oh, right. Well, Bob definitely gets it. Iru understand. None of those people on the panel are not going to understand that concept. I'm quite positive that we've had very high level conversations, on and off air. I don't really know much about KMB, right? I just even was introduced to her, so I don't really know. But everyone on the panel.
If Bob does get it, he keeps pushing it as a white swan argument for flat Earth, which is the absolute opposite of what we're pushing. We're pushing it as a black swan argument against the ball. So Bob's pushing it completely in the opposite direction to what we're pushing it. So if he gets it, he's not relaying the message.
No, he's not getting it. He's not getting
maybe he
it.
doesn't.
Sorry.
Maybe he doesn't want to relay the message, and that's why I was saying I don't see how it doesn't supersede argument. I don't know any of the historicity between these shows or the people, right? So I don't know if that's a valid assessment or not. But I don't think. I mean, Bob is far from dumb. He's actually quite smart, So I don't know, man. But that's why I think a good way to put it is, well, it's the globe Earth's black swan. But I think that to really harp on that is just semantics, and it hurts the general cause. And I know that's y'all's take, so I agree with you on that. All I can really do is vocalize that both directions and let it be.
Just say that again. About what did you say you thought hurts the argument generally?
The semantical argument.
So whoa! What's semantical argument?
Semantically, as in arguing over the connotation of black swan analogy, because it's globe Earth's black swan, right? So it's really conflation to say it's relevant to a flat Earth swan. So it's irrelevant to me. So
exactly.
Well, he doesn't understand blacks. See, guys are focusing on the wrong thing. Got the wrong emphasis on the wrong syllable for one, right? He's all about the black swan. I never heard the argument stated anywhere. The Globers do the same thing. State the argument. The black swan doesn't mean there's one black swan. Okay? Now drop that train wreck part of the argument. I don't know where these people come up with this. Are there more than one black swan? I mean, in reality, or actual swans. Are there more than one black swan?
Of course.
Yep.
Of course there are. So I don't know what's going. I just want people to restate the argument. Just restate the argument. That's all I ask. Thanks.
I agree with you, brother. I think it's the globe Earth black swan. It doesn't really need to be overly harped on from anyone out, right? Like accept the argument, relay it, or just don't. Right? I agree with you. I think that's about as far as it can go. And I mean, what people do with it, I don't
See,
know.
but that right there is the problem, right? Is that for us to say it's the globe, Earth, black swan. It's beautiful, and that needs to be harped on. But then when, okay, people on our side just say, well, nah, it's not really a strong argument. It's an everyday swan. Well, that takes away the strength of the argument. So leave the argument as is, or don't speak about it. I mean, it's one or the other. Why dilute it and make it not as strong as it is? Because that doesn't make any sense at all.
Can I speak to that bit, Chocolate? Maybe
sure.
On the other team side, maybe they don't recognise that their comments provide ammunition that can lead to 20 minutes obfuscation around a point that you guys have then got to deal with, which is part of the frustration on that battlefront, that this shit will be brought to you to handle with the ballers, as opposed to the issue of the swan. They'll use this to flip-flap and interchange as a distraction with looming.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, they'll see it as,
Well,
oh,
obviously,
look,
y'all
they can't even get it together, so let's just attack them on that, instead of everybody standing strong saying, hey, look, guys, if we live on a ball with a 3959 radius, your horizon is in the damn wrong place. Explain that. That's the strength of that, because you can't explain it.
Or no, it's not explained. No, that's wrong. That's where some people are going wrong. If you understand the formulation of the logic, there's no question about, is there an explanation for this? You just state the logic as it is, and the logic makes it plain. The Earth is not a sphere at the end of the logical consistency. So there's no request for explanation needed. Now, they'll offer one, and you can debunk it. But the logical consistency doesn't offer up a request for an explanation, because there isn't an explanation. That's the whole point. If you've got physical geometry, it has restraints based on its physicality, and that is the assertion from the globe side of this argument. Earth has physicality that is sphere-shaped, measurable with geometry. Well, once you debunk that we don't have that physical geometry, the Earth is not a sphere. Not, what's your explanation for this? Sorry, Chocolate.
No, that's exactly my point. There is no explanation for it. I don't need one. And usually when I tell them there is no explanation for it. So I completely agree, yeah.
I think the thing is that the globebusters aren't dealing with debating. They're not dealing with the people like Rumpus and Co. that people are, like we deal with. They don't deal with any of that. So if they should spend a month trying to debate against Rumpus and Co. Rumpus and Co. would love that, because Rumpus and Co. would see them as easy targets. That's what they don't understand.
It's the Vietnam argument. You weren't there, man.
Vietnam argument.
Hey, before this gets lost, before this point gets lost, hey, Witsit gets it. Big props to you, man. Takes some courage to come in here. So, thumbs up, man, from me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem, bro. For sure.
And with that, I'll say another huge, massive, enormous thank you to both Discord and G+ panels for making this after show possible. And of course, a massive thank you to all of you in the Nathan Oakley premiering stream audience for hopefully smashing the super chat, liking, commenting, sharing, subscribing, and all that good stuff. Be sure to check out nathanoakley.com and the Flat Earth Debate Forum to keep up to date with the community debate. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I'll see you all in the next video.
Oh, what a day! What a lovely day!